Communications Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560 The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. As Mike Scott mentioned, Biden is poised to announce his nominee for the Supreme Court to replace the retiring Stephen Breyer, and the AP is reporting it's going to be...
A black woman?
Well, yeah, that for sure. A black woman named Ketanji Brown Jackson, who's a judge on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. No surprise there. She was one of the shortlisters,
right,
and she's already been nominated by Biden to go from the district court level to the appellate court level. She's already been confirmed by the Senate. So no surprise there, but we'll get into more details about that nominee and the political implications a bit later. Now I've got some bad news for you and me, Amy.
What?
And it comes from our friend Arthur Brooks's latest book. On average, the peak of creative careers occurs at about 20 years after career inception. So that means professional decay in terms of performance and capacity starts to take hold between the ages of 35 and 50. And then, I mean...
So I'll leave now, but you can stay.
Well, yeah, just barely. And financial professionals peak between the years 36 to 40. And then basically you're just waiting for the merciful finger of the Grim Reaper to tap you on the shoulder, as I understand it. No, I don't think that's Arthur Brooks's point. His new book is From Strength to Strength, Finding Happiness and Deep Purpose in the Second Half of Life. Arthur Brooks, as you know, is the former president of the American Enterprise Institute. He's also now the William Henry Bloomberg Professor of the Practice of Public Leadership at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government and Professor of Management Practice at the Harvard Business School. Arthur, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Nice to talk to both of you. Boy, was that ever a setup. I promise you, this is not going to be a depressing conversation. Yeah. This is a good news conversation on how we all can get happier as we get older, and we're all getting older.
Well, so we just go to an assisted living facility at 50 and just get out of people's way?
No. That's not it at all. I mean, what the book actually shows, this is a 7-year study that I undertook to actually figure out how I was going to get happier. I'm a social scientist, as you both know, and some of our listeners know. I was the president of a big think tank in Washington, D.C., a conservative think tank, but I'm trained as a PhD social scientist. And I thought to myself, there's nothing good written about happiness as people get older. Everybody thinks it's just going to take on, it's got to be good luck. You hope things will turn out for the best. And it turns out, after a lot of study, there's a lot of good brain science and social science on this. We don't have to leave it up to chance. And a lot of people make big errors. So these are the 7 secrets of what the happiest people do as they get older. So I looked at the happiest old people, and I looked at their investments and practices going through their life. And so we can all do these things. And you can remarkably change the curve. You can actually get more successful, get happier, and get more meaning if you do these 7 things.
All right,
okay, I know.
Well, I know move to Southwest Florida is one of them, but what are the other 6?
That's not it.
Okay.
I know. You just take the highway straight down from Chicago. And by the way,
right.
I was in Chicago yesterday because I was talking to the front office staff of the Cubs about how they could actually embed happiness science even more into their product. But I got to tell you, just Cubs baseball in and of itself is a happiness-provoking thing. So that's not one of the secrets, but I have to say I love Chicago. I love the Cubs. So the big secrets, basically, they have to do with not fighting change. You mentioned at the outset in the intro to this segment that a lot of people, they find that the skills that they had early in life, you practice, you work hard, you play by the rules, and that makes you better and better. But after a while, you start to get a little less interested, a little more burned out on a lot of the things that are happening. That's fine. That's normal. Your big success curve comes later. And it's not on that hard work, innovation, kill it more than anybody else curve. It's on your instructor curve, your mentor curve. So you kind of go from being an innovator to becoming a teacher later in life. And I talk about the steps to actually doing that, and you can get much happier if you understand these ideas.
It's really interesting you raised that because this reminds me of a book that our friend Rich Karlgaard, who's the publisher of Forbes, wrote a couple years ago called Late Bloomers, and it was all about people who
Yeah, it's a great
found
book.
people found success sort of on their own terms, but later in life, like after 50, and mostly economic success, but not limited to that. And he talked about things like the development of your emotional intelligence, which happens later in life. So I know this is interesting to you as a social scientist as well. So it seems like it sort of dovetails. I know it's not strictly economic, but you're right. Sort of your capacities change over that period of time, and that informs what you're able to do and from where you derive fulfillment.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the brain changes, and just the way that you see the world tends to change. And the unhappiest people are the people who don't want to change. They want to stay on their old curve. So one of the things that I talk about in the book is that people, especially strivers, they get kind of a curse of a success addiction. I get the cookie every time I do the good thing. I get the promotions, I get the raises, I get the praise from other people. People can get really hooked on that. There's actually brain science showing that they're hooked in the same way that people are on cigarettes and alcohol, as a matter of fact. So breaking that addiction is critically important. But there's so many other habits that the happiest people have in the way that their lives change, and they can actually find peace. They can actually find more love in their lives. And the most amazing thing is how people, whether they're making more money or not, because this is really not about money at all, they can find more professional success by playing to their newfound strengths after 50.
Wow. So you mentioned, though, that you spoke with some everyday men and women who were happy and those who were not. What is the worst story that you heard of somebody who's unhappy? What did they do? Like, was it a certain decision that they made?
Actually, well, what they're doing is they're raging against the changes from the past. And so this book actually starts on an airplane. I mean, this whole research project for me started on an airplane about 8 years ago, and I was inadvertently eavesdropping, and there's an elderly couple sitting behind me, and it was at nighttime. I couldn't see them, but I could tell they're probably in their 80s, and man and a woman. I assumed they were married, and the man was telling his wife that he might as well be dead.
Oh.
He said, "Nobody cares about me. I'm forgotten by everybody." I thought, wow, this guy must be really disappointed in his life. He probably never did anything that he was proud of. And the lights turn on at the end of the flight, and I turn around, and it's literally one of the most famous men in the world. This guy has done 10 times more with his career than I will ever do. And I thought, wow. Success is no insurance policy. On the contrary, there's a striver's curse for people who keep trying to hang on to the past, because his achievements were many decades in the past. Despite the fact that he's fabulously rich and famous still, he's not getting the cookies. He's not getting the satisfaction that he used to get anymore. And I thought, boy, oh boy, if this is going to happen to this guy, you can't dine out on past success. You got to go from success to success by playing to your strengths.
And we have to read the book to find out who the man is.
No, you're not going to. No, I'll
No, you're not
going
going
to.
All right.
Yeah,
No,
I
that's
assume.
cool.
That's
I
fair. Yeah, private conversation. That's fair. Well, and also too, I mean, it seems to me that part of this is, people are drawn to or think they only get value from things that society confers status to. And so they'll pursue things that from which they can attain status, even if it's things that they don't really particularly like to do or want to do.
Yeah, that's right. And you're willing to put up with that earlier in life. But the truth is the problem with the status-making things is that they crowd out the important things. So, for example, the world tells you that there's a really simple formula. You want to be successful and happy, you need to use people, love things, and worship yourself. Right. I mean, watch anything on television. This is the problem with our culture, isn't it? But the truth of the matter is that the happiest people, they rearrange that formula. And so it sounds almost the same, but the real formula for happiness, especially as you get older, is use things, love people, and worship God. That's the formula. It's a 7-word formula. And it's just incredible how the happiest people just follow it. Now, the devil's in the details, as they say. So how do you follow it? That's the book. That's the reason that I have a whole book on the 7 habits on how people follow this particular formula. But once you get that formula right, holy cow, the world just opens up to you.
And you're allowed to say "love God" to your students at Harvard? Is that
that's
allowed on campus?
I mean, so far I've not. It's so far so good. That's all I can say. My students are so great. I teach a class at the Harvard Business School called Leadership and Happiness, and I've got 180 students in the class, and I have 400 on the waiting list. It's one of the most oversubscribed classes because guess what? People want to get happier, and they want to make other people happier. And here's the thing. A lot of people listening to us are not like me in my 50s. A lot of people listening to us are 25 or 35, and, people in Chicagoland who just want this great content from your program. Well, the truth is, the earlier you start to make the investments in yourself, the better the rest of your life is going to be. You could be happier at 75 than you were at 25, but the earlier you start thinking about your life in this particular context, make these investments, the better off you're going to be. So don't leave happiness up to chance. Start doing the right thing at any age.
On the financial piece of it, because understandably, as you get older, economic security becomes more central, right? It's something I need to plan for my retirement, for my family, and so on and so forth. And, but is there diminishing marginal returns to economic security? And there's been a number of studies that have kicked around, happiness above certain incomes. There's diminishing marginal returns. And I just wonder what you found on that economic security question as you're talking about the second half of life.
Yeah, people tend to start feeling really insecure about money, and they're trying to bank more, and they think an awful lot more about it. And part of the reason is because some people simply don't save enough, right? But the truth of the matter is that people are kind of substituting money for the kind of investments that they really want to make, but they don't know what they are. So in this book, I talk about the Happiness 401k, the kind of investments that you can make to truly bank the relationships in your life, the way of seeing life, to kind of bank your happiness in the same way that you would setting up a really strong and good investment account. And when you do this, you just become a lot less worried about the financial implications of what's going on because you can put money in its proper place, which is to say, not in first place, because love has to be in first place.
Interesting.
Can I ask one more question?
Go ahead, Amy.
All right. What about worrying? Because a lot of women worry. They make it a full-time job, actually. Is that part of this? If you drop, if you focus on other things than just worrying about the past or worrying about the future, would that lead to a happier life?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's why I have a whole chapter in this book about fear. Okay. And the key thing that the happiest people do when they get older is they figure out how to beat fear. Fear is the opposite of love. Fear crowds out love, as a matter of fact. People think that hatred is the opposite of love. It's not. One of the things that you find is that when people don't have enough love in their life, it's because they have too much fear in their life. They're acting according to fear. Older people, when they're getting happier, they've figured out a way to beat it. And the best way to beat fear is by confronting it directly. And so I have a whole chapter that talks about how Buddhist monks actually will contemplate their own death to make it ordinary and not scary. Now, most of us are not afraid of death, but we're afraid of something like death, like being forgotten or becoming irrelevant or not being good at what we did in the past. That's a form of a fear of death. And so I talk about exactly how to beat those fears for people who are afraid of what's going to happen in their family relationships or their professional lives. And you can beat that fear. And in point of fact, if you want to get happier as you get older, you must. And here's the way to do it, basically, and from strength to strength.
I hope there's that maybe this was written before, but there should be an addendum for that specifically to COVIDians. Fear is the opposite of love. Fear prevents happiness. Timely.
For sure.
Timely.
Look, for sure. I mean, it's like one of the things that I've written a whole lot about in my research is that symptoms of clinical depression have more than tripled during the coronavirus epidemic. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that many people are really racked by fear. And so one of the things that we can do, those of us who are not so really want the world to go back to normal, is don't be hostile and angry and mean to people who are afraid. It's not kind. And I realize it can be irritating. It can be very off-putting. I really get it for people who are not going back to normal because they're so afraid. But this is an opportunity for us to show love. When you see fear, bring love. It will help you and it will help them too.
He is Arthur Brooks. The new book, From Strength to Strength, Finding Success, Happiness, and Deep Purpose in the Second Half of Your Life. Also, if you haven't read his previous bestseller, Love Your Enemies, you should pick that up too. Former president of the American Enterprise Institute, now a teacher at Harvard, both the Kennedy School as well as the Business School. Arthur Brooks, thanks so much for joining us. Best of luck with the book.
Thanks, Dan and Amy. I appreciate it an awful lot. Love your show.
Thank you. And I'm glad that you love Chicago. Chicago loves you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Sheet metal is a big part of commercial and industrial facilities. Look around your business and you'll quickly notice how many components use sheet metal. From fan systems and hoods to machinery guards and much more. For top quality sheet metal work, get to know the pros at Vans Industrial.
Hi, I'm Dave Van Camp, owner of Vans Industrial. Vans Industrial is an industrial sheet metal contractor that can fabricate all types of alloys up to 1-inch plate. We perform